Hi, I'm Jan Guarino and this is Fearless Watercolors. Welcome. Today I'm going to be demoing this little portrait here. This lovely little French girl was a photograph that I took when we were in Provence on a riverboat cruise where I took a group of artists to. And it was that morning light hitting her that made me so excited. It was just this beautiful scene unfolding in front of me. And that's what it's about, is what draws you in to paint anything. And whenever I'm out looking for things to paint, they kind of hit me with light, shadow, shape, color. That's really what I'm looking for. And the light hitting her was so beautiful. So I'll be speeding this up so that you could follow along, and I will see you on the other side of it. Enjoy. Thanks for visiting. So let's get started with painting. I'm using my incredible dragon's blood. It's a beautiful color. It's from Mamari Blue Italian paints. Hard to find nowadays. I am trying to find a replacement. However, some come close, and but nothing really has replaced my dragon's blood. And what I've started to do is find the shapes of the shadows to the left side of her face so that I'm saving all those beautiful whites of the light hitting her on the right side. And I'm dropping some violet in there because I know it might feel unusual adding those kinds of colors into a face, but when we look at faces, we really do see various colors. And I'm color temperature sensitive. My students sort of know that I like adding cool colors into shadow areas. And you could see with a simple few shapes, her face really has taken form. And I did blend the edge of her face into the hair so that you wouldn't have a harsh hairline and it doesn't look like she has a wig on her head. Now her hair is blonde, so I'm using raw sienna. Don't use yellow. Raw sienna will do a beautiful job with it, and we'll drop some other deeper colors into the shadow areas. And you could see how fast her face appeared. Now I'm dropping more violet into her hair on that left side to create the shadows, because using color wheel, yellow and violet are your complements. And so I know that that will create a beautiful, rich, canceling out each other's color tone, a brown tone, and yet still hold on to their original properties. And you will see a little violet and the raw sienna. And I'm working very wet into wet, not worried about lines. When we do portraits, very often we get very tight, and we so want it to be perfect. And so we tighten up. I see it all the time in my classes. And yet we really are just in the beginning stages of adding some washes. We're not getting into color details at all. We'll do that later. This is my Sexy Scumble brush that we created from an old sable brush. If you're unfamiliar with that type of painting with some fun scumbly marks, and you have an old sable brush that you want to try it with, find my YouTube video. I think I call it Sexy Scumble brush or brush shaping. That could be another one. And take those old brushes that you're not using and find a new use for them. It will become one of your favorite brushes for doing loose backgrounds. So that was a fun way to add some nice foliage. And notice I'm doing what I call bridging the palette. So in those greens, in the moment, I did find her shape of the back of her rather easily by reverse defining her, negative painting, reverse definition of her clothes there. And I dropped a little reddish violet and probably a little dragon's blood into it because it will help the palette of the paint of your overall painting, A, look more painterly, and B, it will help it be much more exciting. It's not just green when we go outside. There's lots of different hues, and we really want to have those in our painting. And so it's a nice way to bring the colors that we started with in her face and her hair and add those violets and dragon's blood oranges into the background. finding the beautiful shapes in her hand. I think I'm doing her leg there. Sorry, it's a little cut off. I do have to learn to frame things a little better for you guys. It's a learning process. Looks like I forgot to record. Again, I'm getting better at it. But all I did was wet that left side, which that column is, and I dropped blue and indigo in. And that's her violin case that we're doing there. I promise you I'll get much better at all of this. But you'll see enough that you will be able to find ways in which to take this into your paintings and find loose ways to depict a subject. Those are her legs that I'm doing there. Oh, I think that's what she's sitting on, using like probably a little quinacridone gold there. I tip my paper a lot. Let me talk about paper for a second. I love arches, and I know that standard is really Arches 140 cold press. And while I really like to use that cold press 140 Arches on location, I'm much more enamored with using Arches 300 hot press. It has a nice tooth to it. It's got a nice thickness to it, and it really moves the paint so beautifully. It's a little smoother than 140 because it's hot pressed, but it has a good amount of tooth that you will be able to find some nice explosions of color. I find if I use 140 hot, it's too slippery, and so I'm really not happy with those results. Building her beautiful blue dress with cerulean, ultramarine, cobalt, not mixing in the pan. I mix on the paper while it's wet. I like doing that because it gets a nice mixture of a variety of blues and colors. And I'm really letting them mix themselves, which is, I think, one of the fun things about watercolor is letting the water and the paint and some gravity do the work for you. We can always go back and add in details, which I'm not worried about right now. But I am but what I am sensitive to about saving is that white light hitting her face, her hair, her dress, the side of her hand. I do want that color to pop out. And so, it's a little indigo, dropping it into those nice shadow areas. Do you see the paint moving there? Because it's still wet, and I'm basing everything that I'm doing on how wet an area is or how dry it is. So I'm always thinking about that. That indigo added nice, rich, deep shadow. And again, moving right down my color wheel from cerulean, a lighter blue, cobalt, a little darker, to ultramarine, darker yet, to indigo. Because you're all next to each other on the color wheel, those are all blues. We'll never get mud. We don't get mud anyway, but there you go. We really worked that out. Just shaping around her fingers and around her arms. And again, that's just that reverse definition that we were talking about earlier. I'll use the background to help me shape something in front of it. Her arm is up, so now I'm building, around her face and her elbow and arm as it's going upward, being sure to hold on to that nice light hitting her elbow. And the folds, you see how quickly and easily folds. I know students struggle so much over that, how to do a fold. A little bit of white and a little bit of shaping, because we're really not painting the folds, we're painting the shapes of the shadows of the folds. So we really do want to be sure to know that while we can do a perfect fold, I'm really not about that. I'm really about suggesting that and letting that actually be created from the light and from the darkness of the shadows of the folds. And you get the idea of it very quickly, because when we talk about this in class a lot, you don't have to paint it all. You can leave something to the imagination or to your viewer's eye. Let them fill in the blanks for you. I always did that when I was in, I went to FIT as a fashion illustrator, and we had live models in front of us 6 hours out of 8. It was an incredible experience. And I would leave the suggestion of the bottom of a leg or a hip or whatever, because your eye filled it in. It was such a nice way to not get fussy and allow your art to do the work for it. The right mark will give you exactly what you need when you need it. And it takes practice. Again, doing drawing classes is an amazing opportunity live from the model. It's definitely challenging, but it's so worthwhile that you do actually learn how to see and how to draw and how to work with the body shapes. I think this is a side of a building, that raw sienna carrying that down. You could see just in the middle of the painting how I let the raw sienna, which is your yellow and your violet, and there's more violet there, tone each other down a little bit and yet still hold on to their properties as violet and as a yellowy raw sienna, building that shadow, that light streaming through. I think there's another architectural detail there that I don't really want it to be so defined, but I do want it to be present. And so I'm working very wet into wet there. My blue and my orange, again, will help create some, because they're complements, they'll tone each other out. I'm always thinking in those terms when I'm painting. I'm always thinking color wheel and giving myself a chance to utilize color wheel to either enhance a color, like those blues, or tone each other down, as in the complements. Little indigo in there, my Mamari indigo. The Mamari indigo, I think I've mentioned in other videos that Daniel Smith has a color that's close. Oh, I'm turning it upside down because I want the gravity to do the work for me. Daniel Smith has a color that's close to it. It is Daniel Smith Payne's Gray Blue, I believe it's called. And that really gives a very close similarity to my Mamari indigo. When I tip the paper, I'm doing that so that I let the paint flow. I don't want to see my brush marks on the paper unless I'm doing, foliage and I want to see a brush mark. In that particular case, wet into wet is the perfect thing to do because it flows right on down for you and it gives you that nice dark, deep color without moving it with your brush. Now see, this area is dry because I worked around it, so now I can build that shadow in her hair. Everybody's going to know it's hair. We don't have to draw every strand. You'll notice also that I am switching my brushes a lot. I keep my brushes readily available to my immediate right because I want to be able to grab a different size brush or a different shaped brush rather quickly. And I just moved to like a number 2 or 3, something like that, for the finer details. Building her mouth, building her chin by painting the shadows. Don't paint lips, don't paint chins, paint the shadows that those features are creating. Paint shapes, paint shadows, charging up areas, that violin case. Because that column is in front, I'm adding a little bit more detail to it. And I'm standing back. I always put my paintings back further so I could see how much more I need to do. And I don't feel too much more is needed with this. I'm feeling kind of complete. So thanks for visiting. Please give me your feedback. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day. Try it. You'll love it. Bye now.